I know I'm a little off, a little strange, but I didn't realize quite how strange it is for me. Uh, when I was a kid, I didn't pay attention in school as I could hardly understand what was going on around me anyway, so there was hardly any point in it. I I spent a lot of time staring out into the schoolyard through the window and not paying attention. I had one teacher that was known for an ambush of any kid who was not paying attention. She'd call on them, and a lot of teachers do that, but she was especially ferocious. She would give you a terrible nickname that would stick for, a week or for the rest of your life. And so there was an adversarial relationship between me and my teacher. And one day I thought that I could kind of get her at her own game. So I stared out the window, but all the while paid laser like attention to the work in the classroom. And about midway through the class, she said, "Jean, what is the difference between an element and a compound?" And I whipped my head around whiplash style and said, "An element constituents are one molecule, whereas the compound requires at least two or more molecules that are connected by chemical bonds." She was not prepared for me to know the answer to that question. She was not prepared for me to say anything. She saw it as the first salvo in our next battle, and she responded by sending me to the principal's office. And I went. And the principal asked me why I was sent to the office. And of course, I told him the truth, that she had asked me the difference between an element and a compound, and I had said that an element, da, 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 da. But isn't that right? I didn't tell him about staring out the window or firing at her like it was a bullet from a gun. And so I remember that day not because that was in itself so memorable. I remember it. I mean, after all, I'd spent a lot of time in the principal's office, more than once a week. I remember it because that was the first time, while I was explaining to him my side of the story, that I had one of my, what you might call, lapses. And that's where my brain just turned off. And, kind of like that, where I would be there 1 second and then just not be there. It's not like my mind was elsewhere. My mind was shut off. So I wouldn't even notice it. And I just would continue the conversation as soon as I was back. Well, that was the first time it happened, but it wasn't the last. And it began to happen more frequently. But I was never aware of it. I was an unsettled feeling, but the time lapse I never was aware of. And then I started to have dreams about it. And the dreams, I was aware of not being there and what was happening and what time had elapsed. And I saw bubbling, colorful blobs, kind of like lava lamps, if you remember it. Some of you may. I mean, after all, they were back in fashion in the 90s. Well, it was it was a feeling that I was like invaded, like something got into my blood and was coursing through my veins. These blobs, these blobs. Now, I studied dreams because, well, my parents had sent me to psychologists about this, then psychiatrists, then neurologists, and finally they ruled out everything. Epilepsy, no. Uh, it was not schizophrenia. They couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. Well, in my dreams, I could feel like being taken over, like being invaded, like my privacy was gone. And and I began to understand that these blobs, well, you see, there's a theory that when you fall asleep and dream in this life, that you actually wake up in another universe and that you have a life there. And then when you fall asleep there, you wake up here and continue your life. And that those dreams are your life in that other universe. And I began to wonder if that was maybe true. You know how when you stub your toe and you know it's gonna hurt, but it doesn't hurt for the first second and a half? I can feel the, the cortisol and the adrenaline coursing through my veins, and it gets to my throat before it gets to my brain, evidently, because I scream before it hurts, just a nanosecond before it hurts. Well, in my dreams, I was taken over by these lava lamp like things, and I discovered that they were not the main beings of that universe. They were the pets.